Coming up on Locked On Dodgers, the Dodgers ended their All-Star break with not quite a bang, but, a little bit of noise. They made a free agent signing that will get some attention for some not great reasons. We'll talk about the Dodgers signing Jake Marisnick. We'll also talk about the rumors that the Dodgers are interested in Lucas Giolito and what he would bring to the table. Then we'll just have a conversation about how crazy we expect the trade deadline to be based on some comments that Ken Rosenthal made. That's what's on tap. So let's get Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Dodger fans, this is Locked On Dodgers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Remember, this show is free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers, or even better, go ahead and subscribe wherever you're watching and listening right now. Then you can be an everydayer just like we are. If this is your first time with us, I am Jeff Snider. My normal co-host is Vince Samperio, but it's just me today. Vince and I are both lifelong Dodger fans just like you are. We've also both spent time covering the Dodgers in the press box and the locker room, so we're not quite insiders, but we bring you the smart fans perspective on our boys in blue every weekday morning. And I want to give a shout out to my brother Eric for the organ music. I got a new intro. I was tired of the generic music and realized, hey, Take Me Out to the Ball Game is public domain. So if my brother, the piano player, makes me a version, we can use that on the podcast. So thanks, Eric. Like he'll ever listen to this podcast to hear that. I'm sure not going to thank him in person. Anyway, like I said, we're talking Dodgers today. It's Friday. The Dodgers finally play again. It feels like forever having that Sunday off before the All-Star break and then 2 days off after the All-Star game. Like, it is crazy. It's been 6 days now since the Dodgers played a baseball game, but tonight that ends. They play the Mets. Excited about that. And their All-Star break ended with a little bit of noise. And it's an interesting move. The Dodgers signed Jake Marisnick. A few things you might know about Jake Marisnick. He was on the 2017 Astros who cheated. He was not on the postseason roster. If I remember, he got hurt. He didn't play after September 13th of that year, so I assume he got hurt. But all in all, he was a big part of that team. He had, what did he have that year? 259 plate appearances for the Astros that year. And it's one of only two good seasons in his career. The other one was the shortened 2020 season. Offensively speaking, he has only had two above average seasons, and one was a shortened season and one was a season that he cheated. And so it's interesting. And, to Marisnick's credit, I mentioned this on Twitter. He seemed more sincere in his apology than some of his teammates. By the time word came out that that the Astros had cheated, he was no longer on the Astros. He had finished the previous season with the Astros, but he was on the Mets at this point. Actually, though, I wonder if he had signed with them yet. I'm looking at the dates. No, he didn't sign till. Oh yeah, maybe he did. Oh, he had been traded by the Astros to the Mets. That's what it was. And right around the time that news was breaking that the Astros were cheaters, it was kind of interesting because Marcus Stroman, who was on the Mets at the time, was one of the most outspoken critics of the cheating Astros. And so Marisnick, he recognized that he was going into a potentially hostile situation. And his first comments to the New York media, he said, "I do recognize this is a major deal. I feel terribly about it. There's a line and it was definitely crossed. I have to go in there and I have to earn their respect and earn their trust. It's not going to go away lightly. I'm going to have to work every day." And, the fact that he said they crossed the line and he feels terrible is better than that, the written statement that Alex Bregman read from his tippy toes at the podium. We regret the actions that were taken. Like this passive voice stuff. Like, I don't like that. But, Marisnick said he feels terrible about it. That's basically an apology. So, we talked about this last offseason when Carlos Correa was a free agent. At some point, it's not fair to the Dodgers if those guys who played for the cheaters in 2017 are allowed to sign with every team except the Dodgers. Like, the Dodgers have to take a harder stance than everybody else. And so that wouldn't be fair. Like, they're in baseball, like it or not. In a perfect world, they would have all been banned for life, sure, but they weren't. So they're still playing. They're going to play for somebody. So if they can help the Dodgers win, they might as well play for the Dodgers. That's my opinion on it. Even Carlos Correa, who is, not very likable as a person, if he could help the Dodgers win, I'd be in favor of him being on the team, honestly. And it took me a while to get to that point, but that's where I am. My issue with the Jake Marisnick signing is it's not clear that he can help the Dodgers win because, like I said, he's not very good at hitting baseballs. He is a solid defensive outfielder. He's played a lot of center field in his career, both corners also, and he's been well above average defensively for his career. So there's that. But he's been like bad offensively for most of his career. OPS plus is 81. Meaning 19% worse than league average over the course of his 11-year career. And he does bat right-handed, which most of the Dodgers outfielders don't do. Theoretically, he could hit lefties, although he hasn't hit lefties great. He's hit lefties better than he's hit righties in his career, but not great. This year, he's hitting lefties pretty well, but it's a sample size of like 19 plate appearances. So it's hard to tell for sure what's going on here. It's possible that the Dodgers coaching staff sees something in Marisnick and they think that they can unlock something. They think that, maybe they saw something in the 2020 version when he wasn't cheating and he was hitting well. Oh, maybe there's something about that they think they can unlock. It was just over a year ago that the Dodgers acquired Trayce Thompson. And like, I went on record as saying, okay, he'll be on the roster until Mookie Betts is healthy, and then he'll be gone and we'll forget that he was ever there. And he ended up being, Trayce ended up being a productive and useful member of the Dodgers the rest of the season. Now that changed this year when the clock struck midnight. He turned, his carriage turned back into a pumpkin. It's been a while since I've seen Cinderella. Sorry, that analogy was bad. But anyway, Trayce Thompson was good last year. So it's possible that Jake Marisnick will be good the rest of this season. It's also possible because when you think about, okay, a guy who plays solid defense in the outfield, hits right-handed, can theoretically match lefties. We just described Johnny DeLuca, who the Dodgers have not found very much playing time for. And, this presumably, even though, roster spot-wise, the Dodgers still had a open spot on the active roster because Miguel Vargas being optioned. So it's not necessarily the case that they need a roster spot, but I would think that the signing of Marisnick means that DeLuca is going back to the minors. Maybe not immediately. Maybe for today they will keep him and go with Mookie at. I don't even know who's pitching for the Mets. So I don't know if obviously lineup is lineup, but there's things they'll do. But it seems like Jake Marisnick is taking the spot that would have been Johnny DeLuca's. And that would seem to be either they want Johnny DeLuca to be playing every day in the minor leagues, kind of like when they sent Michael Busch down. I was okay with that move because Michael Busch needs to play every day. But like Busch, DeLuca could be just trade bait. And maybe they want him playing in the minors so that he's building his trade value up so that they can trade him this month. It's tough to tell. Jake Marisnick doesn't move the needle for the Dodgers, most likely, performance-wise. But if he can fill a roster spot as well as Johnny DeLuca does, and that makes it easier to trade Johnny DeLuca for something worthwhile, maybe it's okay. Maybe that's a decent trade-off. I don't know. It was a weird signing. I know a lot of people were upset about the Astros thing. I also saw people mentioning when Marisnick a couple years ago ran over Jonathan Lucroy, gave him a concussion. It was a dirty play at home plate. And I was critical at the time. And of course, Astros fans got in their feelings about it. I don't think Jake Marisnick's a dirty player. That was a dirty play. So he's cheated. He's had at least one dirty play, but he's also a Riverside boy, probably grew up a Dodger fan. So maybe it'll be okay. And maybe they'll find some magic like they did with Trayce Thompson, but it's probably a low risk signing that can't end up too badly. I'm going to come back in a minute. I'm going to talk about a rumor about somebody the Dodgers might be targeting to be a starting pitcher. So thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning, and please keep it Locked On Dodgers. This episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Look, eBay Motors is it's if you want to have a championship team, you need to have all the right parts, the right players. That's a perfect fit. And it's the same thing when it comes to your car. Every part needs to fit just right. I've been trying to do more of my own auto repairs myself. I'm trying to teach my kids to be self-sufficient, which means I need YouTube to teach me how to be self-sufficient. So I've been trying to do some of this stuff. And there's nothing worse than ordering a part and then getting it and discovering that it's the wrong part. So frustrating. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure that every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know the part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. All right, I am back. I want to thank you again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. I want to remind you, with the Dodgers playing again tonight, if you can't catch the game on TV, I think tonight's game is on Apple TV. If you don't have that, you can always listen to the Dodgers hometown radio broadcast on SiriusXM or the SXM app. Just launch the SXM app and search for Dodgers. You can also listen to this podcast on that app. Search for Locked On Dodgers, because that's what the podcast is called. You probably could have figured that part out. Also want to thank all of you everydayers. We love our everydayers. If you're watching or listening every day, you are our favorite people. If you're not, guess what? You could be our favorite people. All you got to do is watch or listen every day. Join that Everydayer Club. It's super fun, and we love talking Dodgers with you. Appreciate all the everydayers that we've heard from. If you are watching this episode on YouTube, we'd love to hear from you in the YouTube comment section. We've been having really good turnout on YouTube lately. A lot of good comments. I'm trying to interact as much as possible. So thank you for all that. Let's get back into the podcast. A rumor, I think it was John Morosi who reported that the Dodgers are interested in Lucas Giolito. And Giolito is an interesting pitcher. He was a top prospect. He was drafted, what was he? He was very early, 16th overall by the Nationals back in 2012. So it's like the Nationals had Steven Strasburg and Bryce Harper and Lucas Giolito. Like he was, they weren't drafting very first like they were with Strasburg and Harper, but it was still a big deal. And Giolito was part of that Harvard Westlake high school rotation. Also had Jack Flaherty and Max Fried. Pretty darn good team, I'd say. And then he got traded from the Nationals to the White Sox in the Adam Eaton trade back at the winter meetings of 2016, which I think those meetings were in Washington, D.C., if I remember right. Anyway, and Giolito, for his first year with the White Sox, he was solid in 45 innings. He only made 7 starts and was really good. Although his FIP, like some of it was luck, it seemed like. He didn't have many strikeouts and allowed, the highest home run rate of his career. So his FIP was 4.94. His ERA was 2.38. So his FIP was more than twice as high as his ERA. And then the next year he was bad. Whether you're looking at FIP or ERA, his ERA was 6.13. His FIP was 5.56. He still wasn't striking anybody out. 6.5 strikeouts per 9. And then somehow in 2019, he figured things out. And his strikeout rate went way up. It had been across his first 3 seasons, his strikeout rate had been 6.4 strikeouts per 9. In 2019, it was 11.6. The next year, 12.1. The next year, 10.1. Last year is down to 9.9. This year's down to 9.4, but both of those numbers are still significantly better than 6.4. And that was really the difference. He started striking dudes out. The hit rate has stayed, kind of consistent. The walk rate has been kind of consistent. Home run rate's been kind of consistent. Strikeout rate was the big change, and that's what turned him into a good pitcher. He finished in the top 10 in Cy Young voting 2 years in a row, 11th the next year. And then last year, he struggled again, 4.90 ERA, although his FIP was just a little bit higher than it had been. So it was really, it came down to his strikeout rate went down a little, his walk rate went up a little bit. And this year his strikeout rate went down again and his walk rate went down. So his FIP's around the same. All that FIP is fielding and independent pitching. If you don't know, it just basically it tries to estimate what the ERA should be based on things a pitcher can control, like walks and strikeouts and home runs. Everything else is kind of disregarded for that. But Giolito has very good stuff, and he has a lot of potential. He's still he'll be 29. Oh, today's his birthday. Happy 29th birthday, Lucas Giolito. So still relatively young and a lot of potential, and definitely seems like the kind of guy who the Dodgers could bring out the best in, especially if they don't necessarily need him to be an ace. They need dependable starting pitching. Bringing a guy like Lucas Giolito would allow them to maybe piggyback Bobby Miller and Emmett Sheehan, maybe send one of those guys back to the minors for a while, maybe alternate them back and forth in the big leagues to manage their workload. But then, you've also got right now Kershaw is still on the IL. Hopefully he's coming off this weekend, although we haven't heard any specifics about that. He's eligible tomorrow, Saturday. Julio looked good in his last start. Hopefully that is still there. Tony Gonsolin looked solid in his last start. Hopefully that remains. But Giolito gives them some insurance on those. It even lets them, if they want to, go to a 6-man rotation for a while to give everybody a little bit more rest. A lot of options with if they were to get Giolito. And the price shouldn't be too ridiculously high because he's not a Cy Young winner. He's a guy who's been solid a couple times. And so the cost shouldn't be too high. It would be interesting. One of the most interesting things would be, would it just be Giolito, or would the Dodgers be looking at other guys on the White Sox to come over? We've talked about Tim Anderson a lot. At this point, Tim Anderson would be kind of like Jake Marisnick. Do they see something that they think they can help unlock? But even when Tim Anderson was at his best, he wasn't he never walks, which isn't quite the Dodger style. And that's okay. If you can, when he was batting 310, 320, not walking very much is okay. But when you're not batting that well, let's see what his, so when he was hitting well in his best seasons, he batted 335 in 2019. His on-base percentage was only 357 because he only walked 15 times. But 357 is a good on-base percentage. But Tim Anderson's career on-base percentage is 312. So even though he has a solid 282 career batting average, his on-base percentage for his career is well below average. And, when he's not hitting for power, he's hit as many as 20 home runs in a season. This year he has 0. He's batting 223 with a 259 on-base percentage. Tim Anderson has been really, really bad this year. And his career OPS plus right at 100, meaning he's been exactly league average. So he's got more star power than star ability, or at least star performance sometimes. Defensively, he's not good. So for me, my mindset would be, if they're getting Tim Anderson, it's to reduce the prospect capital they have to give up, not because they want Tim Anderson, but saying, hey, give us Giolito for less and we'll take Tim Anderson off your hands, because he's owed, I guess he's in the last year of his contract with a team option for next year. But it would take $10 million. No, not 10 million, a few million. So maybe there's no incentive for the White Sox to dump him, which is why I don't think that Anderson's coming to the Dodgers. I don't think they have a need there. So we'll see what happens there. But Giolito is a guy I could get pretty excited about, and not the ace, but could be a guy who comes in surprises and kind of takes that next step with the Dodgers, like some guys sometimes do. I'd love to see it, honestly. And, I wouldn't mind seeing a reunion of that Harvard Westlake rotation, trade for Jack Flaherty too, see if they can help him regain that potential. And then Max Fried coming over at some point. But, Giolito is the one who's realistic right now. And I think he would be a solid addition. I don't think he would solve all of their pitching needs, but he would definitely be a good first step in their pitching needs. So that's my thoughts on Lucas Giolito. Love to hear your thoughts. If you're, watching on YouTube, like I said, comment below. If you're listening on the podcast, send us comments through social media or email. I'll give you all that contact info at the end. I'm going to come back in just a minute. I'm going to talk about the trade deadline in general. Ken Rosenthal had some comments about how crazy he thinks it's going to be that were kind of interesting to me. So I will be back in a minute to do that. So thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen, and please continue to keep it Locked On Dodgers. This episode is brought to you by Bird Dogs. Look, Bird Dogs is what do you do when you have a problem? Like, say you didn't like the fabric of the shorts you were wearing. What would you do? Would you invent new fabric? That's what Bird Dogs did. They invented new fabric. They said, you know what? This fabric, it sucks. What wouldn't suck? So they invented cloud knit fabric that looks just like khaki, but it stretches so you get a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement. And their fancy invented fabric is also anti-stink sweat wicking fabric. So it keeps you cool and dry all day long. And have I mentioned, they look really good. My son wears his and he gets compliments. Like my younger son, we were over at one of his baseball teammates' houses swimming, and my older son was wearing his Bird Dogs. And one of the moms of the boys on the team saw him and said, "Where did you get those?" And he told her it's Bird Dogs, and feels like I'm wearing nothing at all. She went out and ordered 3 pairs of Bird Dogs for her son because she liked how much they looked on my son, how well they looked on my son. So, baseball moms approve. I approve. My son approves. Everybody approves. So go to birddogs.com/LockedOnMLB or enter promo code LockedOnMLB for a free Yeti style tumbler with your order. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnMLB or promo code LockedOnMLB to get a free Yeti style tumbler with your order. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you. All right, I am back. One last segment. Thank you again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Remember, again, you can catch every Dodger game live as it's happening on the hometown radio broadcast on the SiriusXM or the SiriusXM app, the SXM app. Just launch the app and search for Dodgers. And I was scrolling through Twitter, as I always do. That app just won't die. And as long as it doesn't die, I keep being addicted to it. But Ken Rosenthal was on a podcast and talking about the trade deadline. And he said people are talking about how it's going to be dead. It's how weird it is. Nobody's selling it, et cetera, et cetera. And Ken Rosenthal said he's not buying it. He said in the years he's been doing this, people say every year, oh, it's going to be dead at the deadline this year. Teams aren't selling. And he said every year hell breaks loose. And this year he expects all hell to break loose again. That was his words. And you know what? It seems likely. Like right now, teams haven't given up yet. We talked yesterday about how weird it is that the Cardinals have officially declared that they are giving up and they're going to trade guys. The White Sox, we talked about them as obvious. Yeah, they're probably going to trade people. If you're a bad team, the A's would trade anybody if they had anybody to trade. But it's those teams in the middle, like both central divisions, the NL and the AL Central, are both really bad, but kind of competitively bad. And so, like, are the Pirates going to sell? Probably. Right now, they're not ready to commit to it yet. But right now, we're still 2.5 weeks away from the trade deadline. And so I think that's the point Rosenthal was making that I agree with, is that just because teams aren't ready to sell right now doesn't mean they won't be in 2.5 weeks or in 2 weeks or in a week and a half. And, coming out of the All-Star break, there will be a big thing. Will the Angels, how are they going to play coming out of the All-Star break? And are they going to kind of try to save their season, or are they going to sorry, I'm trying to pull up the Angels schedule, and turns out I can't talk. When Vince is here with me, I can make Vince talk while I'm typing and pulling stuff up. But I just wanted to see who the Angels are playing coming out of the break. So, yeah, the Angels play the Astros and then the Yankees. Their first 6 games out of the break. The Angels, their season could be over 6 days from now because the Astros are a very good team. The Yankees have potential to be a good team, and the Angels, Mike Trout's hurt. Anthony Rendon, I think, is hurt again. Maybe he's back now. The Angels season could be over and they'll decide to sell. All these teams, the Mariners are they're only a game ahead of the Angels right now. So the Mariners could have the same situation. Their season could be over soon. There's so many teams that these next 2 weeks will be really, really crucial for them. And what we do know is that not everybody can win every game. Not everybody can win. Like there's always a winner and there's a loser. And so there are teams that are going to, in the next 2.5 weeks, fall out of contention far enough that they will decide to sell. Now, will it be teams who have things that the Dodgers need? I don't know. Starting pitching, I think, is going to be at a premium this trade deadline because pretty much every contending team could use more starting pitching. And so you have the guys like Giolito and Jack Flaherty and, two other guys, Dylan Cease and Lance Lynn on the White Sox. There's going to be pitchers. Rich Hill, if the Pirates decide to sell, he would be an intriguing guy. I've said before, I'm not interested in him coming back to the Dodgers, but he could be a guy that teams are trading for. There's so much potential for big trades. Obviously, Shohei Ohtani would be a big one too. We just won't know until teams start falling out of contention. And when's that going to be? Probably before the trade deadline. There will be some teams who are still in contention at the trade deadline, decide not to sell, and then 2 weeks after that wish they had sold. There may be teams that wish they hadn't sold. But for the most part, I think the trade deadline's at a pretty good date on the calendar for teams to figure things out and know if they're selling. It's going to be, because of the extra playoff teams and everything, it's going to be a little bit closer to the deadline before some of the teams do figure it out, because it's easier to contend when almost half the league makes the playoffs. Anyway, I thought that was interesting that Rosenthal said, he's done this a long time, trade deadline stuff. It's what he's good at, is the trade rumors and all that stuff. The actual baseball analysis, he's not great at, but this stuff, he knows what he's talking about. So thought that was interesting. Thought I'd talk about that a little bit. And I think that's going to do it for me for today and do it for us for this week. Thank you guys so much for listening and watching. Thanks to our everydayers. We love you guys. If you're not an everydayer, it's really easy club to join. Just watch or listen every day. It's super fun. Remember, you can watch or listen to every Dodger game on SiriusXM or the SXM app just by searching for Dodgers. You can also listen to this podcast there by searching for Locked On Dodgers. You can find this podcast, obviously, on YouTube, wherever you get podcasts. You're watching or listening right now. You know where to find it, but maybe you want to find it in all the places. That's a good idea. Watch and listen everywhere, every day. You can follow us on Instagram and on Twitter at Locked On Dodgers. Vince is on Twitter at VinceSince91. I'm on Twitter at Snydog, and the DMs are open in all of those places. Our email address is lockedondodgers@gmail.com, and our phone number for voicemails or text messages is 323-863-LOCK 5625. We are here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car or sit on your couch, tell your smart device to play podcast Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. We'll talk to you on Monday.